Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of AI Marketers Guild. And it's not an edition of K-pop Demon Hunters, as I was quick to say about the most popular movie in the world right now. But I think we're going to have a lot of fun just the same, especially because I'm joined by an old friend, James Lamberti, who I've literally known for decades, right? Like we're in
Yep.
that territory.
It goes back that far. Yeah.
And as I was cutting my teeth early on the research side of eMarketer, and then on the agency side, it's like I had to know what James was doing, and just amazing background at ComScore and elsewhere. But now I'll let him introduce himself. But AI Marketers Guild, you might know some of his work because a lot of you actually took part in it, thanks to some research that he was fielding through the VC firm Georgian. And he's got some results to share. We'll share some hot takes. We want to hear your takes on things. There's plenty of material that the press release literally came out today that we'll send out, and lots more info that you'll be able to digest. James, why don't you share a little bit more about who you are, the work you've been doing, and we'll dive into some of
Yeah.
the amazing data that you have.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Hey, it's great to be in front of this group. Again, David mentioned we over the years crossed paths, and I think this time will be maybe the best one of all, in my opinion. So I have been a CMO or a COO or GM over the years, 11 growth stage companies, right? So, and then about a little over a year ago, called Georgian. Georgian is a growth equity or venture capital firm. It's one of the largest ones in Canada. We have about 50 something companies in our portfolio, about 5 or 6 billion in what they call AUM, assets under management. And I've always enjoyed working within their portfolio. I often called them when I was looking for the next interesting growth stage company. And on this particular occasion, they said, "Why don't you join?" So I joined, and it's been really kind of cool because I now work with my mandate is essentially to work with 50 plus CEOs, helping them with their growth stage go to market challenges. And at the same time, I often pilot in to do, specific like secondments. So it's kind of cool to work with 50 CEOs as opposed to one. And one of the things I set up, and I immediately called David when I thought about it, was Georgian's main differentiation is an AI lab. We are about very unique in the venture capital world. We have a 20-person strong PhD level VP engineering level AI lab that started in 2018 and has been a big part of differentiating this particular firm. So that's the backdrop for you and an introduction to me. What this project is all about is the AI applied benchmarks report. Is the way I would describe it is like it's an open, almost like an open source research project. Like we have freely opened the doors. I called David as part of it and said we want to get a community of thought leaders involved, and that community includes people like AI Marketers Guild, Go to Market Partners. You might know Sangram Vajre and his team, great people. We've got government nonprofits like the Vector Institute and Amy that are affiliated with University of Toronto, which is where Sam Altman and a lot of the open AI people came out of U of T, right up there with Stanford and MIT in terms of its pedigree around the world, other VC firms around the world. And so this is a program that exists now in multiple countries: Tel Aviv, San Francisco, New York, Toronto, Montreal, and London. So this is the program. And this group of you in particular is really geared toward bringing in an enterprise viewpoint. So that's what this is all about. You can see here how we're rolling this out. I will invite you to go to georgian.io where you can send it around, but there are multiple reports, very deep research reports being unveiled. A global view, the view we're going to talk about today is the enterprise versus growth stage company view. I often think these two segments of the market can learn from each other. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Methodologically, the rigor, it's very rigorous. I won't go through all the details, but it's run through a third party called NewtonX. We did a full RFP. David and I share a background in research. So the rigor is there, is my point, and it's quantified and really good data that fundamentally is not about the hype. I'm sure you saw the MIT stuff that came out. Even that, I felt like even MIT, as incredible as they are, again, feels like a lot of anecdote, a lot of sensationalism, a lot of opinion. This is very grounded in what is actually happening. It's benchmarking the application. And we'll start today with a conversation with all of you to introduce you to this project. And I hope going forward, we involve you more and more and more in the future. So starting with our poll, David.
Yeah, let's get this queued up here. So I've got our first one ready on AI maturity, and you are welcome to participate.
Yeah. So the one of the main things we did with the research is we did a formal segmentation. It's quantified and it segments the market, the entire study into crawlers, walkers, joggers, and runners. So I'd be interested in you all as self-evaluating. Where do you think you're all at, right? And as we do that, David, I know what the research says. I know empirically what actually defines a runner versus a crawler, but and you're pretty familiar with the study, but what's your hot take? What do you think would be the factors that would define a runner? Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, well, for runners, first of all, I think you've got to be learning by doing, right? Like you're actively piloting and then implementing and learning from failures. I think one thing that maybe is underappreciated and that comes up to some degree through the research is the cross functionality. Like how do you get smarter as an organization? How do you have things that are going beyond just a single task, a single discipline? And so it's not just something that's making the sales team a little better or helping with the content and messaging. It's how does this really ladder up to organizational goals? And as there are people like shout out to Mark Avnet, who I've learned so much from the learning and development side from. Do you have methods for disseminating this information across the organization? And is this like a nice to have that, like someone can log into something and like see a demo if they want, or is this institutionalized that you really need to learn this stuff to stay relevant at this job? And we'll end the poll since we got most people participating here, and I'll share the results where this crew, more than half are joggers with a high intermediate maturity and followed by some of the walkers. And I like that whether you're answering for yourself or maybe a key client you're working with, that even in a room like this, that where it tends to attract a little more sophisticated a crowd, it's that it's much more centered in the middle of that curve.
Yeah. And that's actually pretty typical. I think what's atypical is, first of all, this group might be hard graders. I think by the nature of who you are and what you do, you're grading hard. But what I notice when we look at the actual results of the study, this is how growth stage compares to enterprise. And then when you think about your own results, I think there's a lot more of you in this group that view yourself as joggers, a slightly fewer that view yourself as runners. And again, I think that last part of being runners versus joggers is a subtle thing. And my guess would be you're grading yourself in a pretty hard way. But David, you're right about your hot takes. And I would say there's a couple things I'll build on. The factors that really segment it out to runners are, number one, the breadth of use cases and functions, deploying AI in production, meaning in a scaled programmatic way, right? Where the enterprise has adopted it. There's a train the trainer type mentality, and it's going across multiple functions, all the way from back-end functions like legal and operations and customer success, all the way to front-end functions like marketing and sales and R&D. Right? So that breadth is one factor. Then within that breadth, there's also depth, right? So depth is really about people going from, I would say, individual acts of heroism to self-learn and use AI in their own jobs to, again, crossing over to becoming a runner is really about scaling your own pilots and learning into production. That's another factor. The third factor is the focus on ROI, actually having an agreed upon enterprise KPI. This came out in the MIT study, by the way. The MIT study, if you haven't read that, is a good read.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things it mentioned was the 5% number. Only 5% of AI strategic initiatives showed positive ROI. We did find one of the highest correlating factors to being a runner is doing the work to tie your initiative to either cost savings or revenue, ARR, in some way. And yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, there was also a great comment brought up by Mark in the chat that there is often a discrepancy between individuals and organizations, and so that there are people mentioning in the chat here today that they might be actively using it, but it's not tied to the organizational process and mandate.
That's right. And that is fundamentally right there is the difference between being a walker, jogger, and a runner. Making that leap into, and that brings it to the final point, which is you fundamentally often need some clear mandate from your executives, your team leaders to do that, to get permission to do that. So that sets up the good conversation. And I think, David, what was your take on this? Growth stage versus enterprise and how they map? I mean, pretty darn close. I have some ideas, but I'm wondering what your hot take is in terms of the segmentation.
Well, I mean, there's a fascinating theme, I think, across the research that you fielded, and that's also dispelling some myths and stereotypes. And because, like, also, I cut my teeth and there's some old colleagues here on the call today who come from these like digital native agencies or related like services and tech companies that are trying to do things different and trying to and like bring some of these dinosaurs into the modern era, right? Like, and that these and so many metaphors about these big ocean liners that are too hard to move, and you have these nimble little kayaks that are going to like scoot right by them, let alone the speedboats and the faster ones. And this is dispelling a lot of that, right? Like, and this is like to me throughout the research that most of the differences, and we'll see some notable ones, but most of them are actually pretty small, or they're the opposite of what you'd expect. And some of those that seem to have the most resources and infrastructure, and this is not unlike what a comment was made here in the chat, was like actually can institutionalize a lot of this better. And these like maybe like an digital native company or a company without any like physical assets or as much overhead can't actually tap into the power of AI in the same way that a larger org can.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think the way I would say it is I've never seen the enterprise segment adopt a massive technology so quickly. Like it's remarkable to me. Like in history, your point in history is like the growth stage companies were always way ahead, and they were the kayaks, and you had to learn from them. And that I do not think that is happening with this wave of technology.
I mean, you've had companies like especially those of us who've been on the agency side a while would like spend like 5-10 years trying to explain like Google or Facebook or TikTok to a client before they'd even use it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, almost some of them are almost using it too quickly before they even know what to do with it. And then they're like, wait, this doesn't work. It's like, yeah, because you just went in blind, but that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. So then we'll double click on a few of these and keep going to the hot takes. But yeah, that's a great start. And we're going to start to understand the nuances of runners versus walkers and the differences. But this is a good question: is where you can check as many as you want, multiple choice. But where do you have AI in production? Again, this is an important thing to clarify: is this isn't off the side of your desk, an individual act of heroism with AI to train yourself and use it, but where you've got a scaled deployment that's enterprise-wide or planned for enterprise-wide and starting to roll across.
Yeah. Yeah. And so check as many as you want. We got a bunch of answers coming in. I want to give people a few more seconds for this one. So you've got, and also, I mean, this is where we talk about some of the cross-functional nature, where if this is just kept in one of these buckets, then there's so much of that missed opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So I'll go to the slide while you're finishing filling it out, and you'll see the results. Here's what it looks like. Again, enterprise versus growth stage. Here you start to see some interesting differences, right? And again, you're really close to each other in many ways. So support and chatbots, really close. Data analytics, this group over indexes relative to some of from the study. Cybersecurity under index a little bit. That's interesting. And then personalization over indexed a bit. So interesting. The rest seem to be pretty much the same, but I think this is a big, well, David, give me your hot take on this. Like, what explains this? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, well, this also, we do have more of a marketing crowd, so that in a room like this, that we'd have say, a little bit less interest in areas like cybersecurity makes sense, but overall, you see that. I mean, like, how do you have some of these mission critical functions that apply again across the organization? Some of it's like low hanging fruit, right? Like, customer support. I think we've even just the nature of the chatbot, like especially bigger firm, have been toying with them for about a decade now. And a lot of the early ones weren't very good, and they were very manual. And if someone said hello or hi, like, you had to program in two different inputs and responses for that. So now so much of that is like, wait, like 98% of the work is just done up front. But and some of those might be less critical needs for, say, an earlier stage org that doesn't have as many customer service issues. I mean, getting data in order is really tough, really critical, great opportunity for AI. But this is also where, like, bigger orgs have much bigger opportunities and, like, bigger problems to solve here. So it's actually great to see that there's so much of that investment being made.
Yeah, this to me describes why this ultimately is. There's tons of data, by the way. We're showing you little flashes, so I really encourage you all to go download this full benchmark report, all the reports, because we're giving you a little pinprick of what's available.
Yeah. Well, you could tell this group's a very data savvy group, so they'll eat it up.
They'll eat it up, right? This to me it goes back to the point of, like, why are enterprises runners at or slightly above growth stage? It's this slide. The opportunity for AI in the enterprise, for all the reasons we just mentioned, is just more acute. And I do think that AI, we'll see this later, but to tease it a little bit, especially on the data analytics side of things, I think the fight we've all been in with our RevOps layers and fragmented data and CDPs, I think that what we're seeing in the enterprise is an epiphany with AI, where I can now have a conversation with my data, even if it's pretty unstructured, scattered throughout the organization. I think we're going to go to the next slide here, because I think this is teased it up really nicely, which is, in which of the following go-to-market use cases are you currently piloting or using it? So we're expanding the aperture a little bit, but I want to think about where you've got a organized, planned pilot, where you plan to roll it out enterprise, but you're trying to learn it within a small pod or a group, specifically with a mandate to roll it out, or you've already rolled it out. And these are specifically now double-clicking on the go-to-market use cases in the poll, David.
And let's actually just hear from some of these in the chat, because we don't have all these queued up on the poll in front, but curious to see what's standing out. So we'll do things the old-fashioned way for a little bit here.
I love it.
From my end, I've been speaking to potential leads and close connections. David, you know a lot of them, and just trying to understand where they are in their individual use of AI and their adoption. And I would say, just in general, for their firms and all the teams that they work with, it's sales and BDR seems to be the most top of mind because I think there's an immediate impact on that. And tied to that really closely, because it's sales and BDR, SDR work, lead scoring and segmentation. A lot of conversations I've been having is how do we best integrate AI capabilities with our existing platforms, whether it be their CDPs, the analytics platforms, or any other systems and marketing tools that they're using for their sales and marketing, and leverage the benefit of that. Going back to the whole like, hey, we can talk to our data once we have it connected, and once we can trust it, and give us the insights that we've been asking for.
Totally agree with that, and we do see it in the data. I'll tee that up. You're right about it. What other lean in moments do people see here?
I mean, one of the areas that's been really strong for us is customer support. So, like, we have clients that don't want to pay for support, but because I want to support them anyway, and so I've used AI to like do an analysis of their website. So, friends, we are a creative marketing platform. We have basically a universal ad unit, and most of our formats, there's no code changes required to any website to run, but there are a few formats like push downs and that kind of stuff. And skins, it requires some code changes to the site, and so I will use AI to examine the client's website and then tell them what changes they need to make. And it may have taken us as a human from a support angle like hours to do that, but AI does it in a couple of minutes. And it's never failed to deliver success for the clients, which is pretty cool.
That's consistent with what you see in the data. That anecdote will bear out in a moment when I flash the data. Is there a
but, I mean, we use that for all kinds. I mean, we use it also for high value research, for segmentation, and for like I've actually stopped using pivot tables. I can just take the raw data and tell it the insights that I want to see from the raw data, and it can spit it out, and it gives me the formulas that it's used to find that data, so I can then go back and double check it.
Are you succeeding in getting from individual acts like you described into full scale production, or train the trainer, helping the entire, I guess, organization do what you just described? Is that true or not? And why?
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, on the developer side, like, so we're a developer heavy company. Mm-hmm. The developers are pretty skeptical of AI, but the rest of the team is not. And anything that we can do to like lessen the load and increase productivity has been met with positive uptake.
And the enterprises tend to be starting there. It sounds like you're more dev centric, which when you look at the R&D data, just to comment a moment on what you said, it bears that out as well. What you see in the R&D swim lane, right? Because when you look at the benchmarks, there's two swim lanes. There's basically a office of the CTO view, which is very deeply technical. I haven't really touched on that much with this group, but when you go get the benchmarks, if you are a dev centric company in a B2B environment, you'll see really deep benchmarks. But one of the biggest challenges that you hit on is individual developers and individual productivity for your dev team and R&D team translating or crossing over into scaled product success. It's definitely I think it's more challenging on the R&D side than it has been on the go-to-market side from what we can see. Like go-to-market and a lot of the back end, like chatbots, like, customer success, we've always had voice agents, right? This is nothing new. There's over a decade of my United Airlines app talking to me automated before I talk to a human. So that it was so logical to have agents begin to do even more and better work there for the enterprise. So let me jump to what the data looks like. We could spend a lot of time on this. This is interesting to me. But again, so you mentioned customer retention, boom, pops. Lead scoring and segmentation, it popped. So your anecdotes and instincts were all really good. What I want to ask David your hot take on, and then we'll open it up to the group listening. Talk to me about marketing, messaging, and content. I mean, it's high generally, right? It's the highest use case. But what explains in your mind that delta between the enterprise and the growth stage companies? That surprised me, candidly.
It's a little surprising. I mean, I think that first of all, there's some on the enterprise level who have some concerns about training models too much on their own content and relying a little bit too heavily on content that comes off as potentially AI generated, where so much of it is like, you're in GTM mode. It's just like, what jobs can you clear today? And not that you don't have high quality standards. It's just, like you're willing to go and say like, like this LinkedIn article doesn't need to be written 100 different ways. Like, let's get this out. Let's get the newsletter going. But still, even with most of these like that there's, that it's not like a night and day difference, right? Yeah. And that it's still, the most popular, option across the board. And I think that there are also a lot of changes coming where as we get into this agentic mode and that becomes a reality, that it becomes more and more possible for organizations of any size to create more relevant content for agents, for bots, for the AI crawlers that are never read by humans. And so there, in a way, there's a little bit more like safety, where if you've structured it well and you're able to answer the kinds of questions that are coming through, then you don't have to worry about things like the readability factor that you still might have if you were doing traditional SEO and you've got a human coming to that page and has to make a decision based on it.
Yeah, my take on this was, I do think that, number one, I will say, I don't buy in, and this may be, I doubt this will be sensational to this group. I do not buy in to the idea that the use of agents and AI in your marketing messaging content will degrade quality. In fact, we're seeing and working in the portfolio to the exact opposite outcome. Because especially in the enterprise, you have the privilege of a lot of really rich private data. You have the privilege or content. And to move quickly in this area and have that private data or a lot of that proprietary thinking combined with maybe third-party data that you're acquiring, combined with publicly available data, I do think that data and original content will still be the dominant quality factor. And enterprises fundamentally have an advantage there. We just saw it in the earlier data, right? So that's kind of stating the obvious. But the fear of the quality drop in my mind is a little bit, again, it's the opposite, because what we're starting to do in our portfolio is, for example, take the brand guidelines, take the persona work, take the objection handling, all the things that the marketing function has fought for decades to actually have your BDRs pay attention to. You're not on brand. You didn't handle that objection correctly. The scaled deployment and use of agents we're seeing in these smaller companies is fundamentally allowing them to get to a standard of branding and persona and quality that so rapidly and so quickly is better than ever, right? And true to their brand and true to their content. So that's one thing I think. I don't know. What do people think about that? I mean, are we seeing in the enterprise among this group the use of agents in the way I just described at scale to protect the brand? Silence?
I think there's something we haven't touched on, and that is the enterprise organizations understand the value of the brand that they've been building over years and years and years. In many cases, marketing has more than a seat at the table. They might even be marketing-driven organizations. Whereas a lot of the startups, it's leads, conversions, and they're looking at short-term results versus long-term brand building. So that's driven part of their rapid deployment of AI. I think I would expect them to be behind based on their size.
Yeah.
but farther ahead based on their desire for quick wins and quick hits.
Yeah, and I guess what I'd say, and I was trying to communicate a moment ago, Aileen, is it Aileen or Eileen? Did I say it right?
Aileen.
Yeah, good. What we're seeing in the portfolio, at least when my team's involved now, is because of AI, these startups, which were, let's be honest, super sloppy, kind of crappy branding, to your point, they in 3 months with a really good sprint on branding, brand guidelines, persona work, they will deploy that via an agent. And lost my screen. Sorry. They're getting to the point where they can achieve a level of branding value that has more rapidly, more quickly than ever before in the startup world for all the reasons you just mentioned. So that's my point, is like you're seeing growth stage companies get to a level of branding and control and quality that is really impressive, far quicker than I've ever seen in all these startups I've been at.
Well, I think also it becomes codified very quickly. So if they get good instruction, good guidance, good training, they can create a brand, hear the parameters, build it into an algorithm of some kind, and everything will obey that. And for enterprise, I know especially the marketing-driven ones, they got a lot of people who want to be brilliant, and so they're going to bend the rules, and some of it will be better, and some of it will not be as good. But there's a little more preference for the human touch versus something that's going to be consistent every time.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of the smaller companies, they're saying that our business is not marketing. Our business is doing whatever it is we're in business to do. If we can formalize that and get it out of the way, we can get back to work.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good take on it. That's a really great take on it. David, anything to add in? And before we move to RevOps, because I want your hot take on some of the RevOps stuff.
Yeah, we can keep it going and get more polls going and all of it.
So I think on this slide, the other one I want to talk about is the lead scoring segmentation number. And this is where, David, I'll turn it over to you, and RevOps. I'll see there, like those two numbers. I guess double click. What go out a year from me? I'm curious to hear how to, like, what does the RevOps function look like? Call it a year from now or 2 years from now, because of AI.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that you can't look at RevOps without looking at how you've got your data governance going on, right? Like, and so I mean, none of these things should be fully siloed. I think there's just so much opportunity right now. And we had a conversation about this a few weeks ago with madtech.ai on how one team's data can affect the other, and how people can learn what's going on across the organization. And so, for instance, like for RevOps to be able to tap into this wealth of customer service data, and not need to hit up the marketing team for every last kind of messaging update. Like the idea, I mean, number of times I've had to create a different a different PDF for every single vertical use case or anything, like for any client I've worked with. I mean, just like some days it's almost like I'm just like collecting one sheets for a living that I've been working on. And the fact is, this work is extremely important, right? So for me to impact sales, like those one sheets are they might be not that like the least sexy thing I do, but so important for helping that team like get out there and be relevant to who they're targeting. And so now a lot of the stuff is like, okay, like I can just give it all the right inputs and make sure that they can go and retrieve what they need without even talking to me. So it's like, it's this funny kind of push and pull. It's like it helps sales and marketing talk to each other better, but means that we don't always have to talk to each other as much. I think it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I think RevOps could be one of the areas that I'm waiting for it to see it, but I think it's going to be dramatically impacted, right? And again, because we've sort of all hinted at in this conversation, because a good agent, a good AI implementation, training on prompt engineering, a clean data set, of course, the quality, the ability to quickly bring together all these disparate data sources that we used to fight against, right? Like, how do I think that is going to, that AI will fundamentally drive a change in that whole layer. We're already seeing, by the way, if you go look at the benchmark research, we're already seeing pretty significant divestment from marketing teams, both in the enterprise as well as in the growth stage companies, of some of the tech, the tooling that we kind of, built up over time. And that started even before AI, but AI has accelerated it. We just need a very thin, high quality kind of CRM or marketing automation layer. We don't need as much tooling around it. And we can have conversations with our data that become the foundation for RevOps. So anyway, I thought this to me is an interesting take to see where it goes. And I don't know if there's any other comments before we move on, but that's my take on this.
Love it.
I would also add to that, James, that I think that from my end, my background is in analytics, and I've been in these conversations going back and forth with the data. And I understand that we've over-engineered a lot of technological solutions from CDPs, CRMs, and other analytics platforms, TMSs, all the different platforms to capture all the data that we're capturing, which was supposed to save us. But now we have to downscale and actually understand what are we actually trying to capture here, and how do we organize it in a way that all teams that are invested in the data can use it. So it makes total sense that you're seeing that on your end with the research that you're doing. I think what's missing is the knowledge of the data in terms of how to use it for the different practices. And I think that's where AI can play a really good, I would say, a guard dog, and making sure that all the data is clean, gathered, clean, collected, and presented in a way that can be used by the teams. Because I think people think that the platform is going to do all that for them. That's where the human insight comes in. So I think that's what you're seeing.
Yeah. So are you in RevOps specifically, or are you just in analytics by background? Like,
I've worked closely with RevOps teams, both on enterprise levels and smaller growth companies, like you mentioned. And I've seen those discussions. I've been in those discussions. And
so how are you
pitching on new platforms all the time, especially when it comes to data? So I've seen these pitches, a dime a dozen.
I'd love this to ask you one question, then we'll move on. But because you're in a better seat to comment. What does your job look like, or what do you think the job of the RevOps team? How are you skilling up? How are you retraining yourself or others around you?
It's
right now.
Well, it's me, and anybody who knows me in this group, I'm a talker. It's more about educating the teams and how we're leveraging the purpose of RevOps and how that plays a part in the goals of the organization. And I find it best because selling is an art that I had to learn late in my career, but it's getting to the money as quickly as possible. Revenue operations. We need to make sure that the car goes. We need to make sure we have gas in the car. If you can sell to the team so they're going to understand the importance and the value of your team and of the investment of, say, AI, then it'll be an easier sell. That's a hard lesson, because for me, it's like, I get it. AI makes sense. We should do it. But you have to convince people, especially the people who are the owners of the teams or who control the P&L, to buy into your vision.
Yep. Great lead in to the next polling question, David, is which of the following best describes how you measure or intend to measure, right? If you've got a program that's just now getting the next one yet. Maybe you don't have a poll for this, but
I got it. Let's see.
Cool. But it goes to it's a great follow-up to what I just heard, which is, how are you fundamentally measuring or intend to measure your AI product initiatives? So these can be, the word product here is really an important dimension to it, because there's lots of initiatives that are general to productivity, but I think this is more about, hopefully a lot of you are in a position where your products, especially if you're B2B oriented, your products fundamentally have to now consider AI as a feature within it. And so anyway, hopefully this makes sense, but direct impact on revenue, direct impact on case savings. Initiatives are tied to cost of revenue, but it's indirect measurement essentially, or a benefit that isn't measured by revenue or cost. And then finally, we're just unsure. There's not a real clear idea of it.
Yeah, well, we've got two clear winners so far, and so I'll wrap this now, and we can see our top two. And curious how this compares, James, with direct impact on new revenue and direct impact on cost savings.
Yeah.
being the second and first most popular selections in this crew.
Yeah. So when you look at, interestingly enough, this is where on the revenue side, this is where it's probably a little bit easier and clearer for growth stage companies to build features, right? Compared to enterprise. However, for this group, you're overachievers compared to anybody, because this is fundamentally a runner concept. And this came out in the MIT initiative as well, where if you're doing the work that we just discussed and you're trying and actively tying that initiative to either direct cost or revenue, it's just more likely to succeed and scale and show value than if you're not. So, I guess, David, what any takes from you or the group on this? This is one's a little bit clear, and I think, but it is a fundamental link to being a runner, is tying it directly to cost or revenue.
Yeah, well, so, some of it, though, one of the most influential books I read nearly 20 years ago was Groundswell, and so from the Forrester team, and I remember Charlene writing about this and saying, no one thinks about the ROI of their fire insurance policy, and so I do think that yes, some AI initiatives need to tie back to revenue, or if there's no delta between how you're going and either making more money or saving money with it, then like why bother? And it's either fans of Groundswell in the room. I love this book. I marked it up so much, but also some of it is like cost of doing business. It's to not get left behind. People brought up today in the chat about enterprises not wanting to go and fall behind competitors here. It's because, James, you talk about how you've never seen adoption this quickly, then like paying that price to learn now, so then you can just keep implementing, and maybe you just haven't reaped the fruits yet, but you're planting a lot of seeds. Like all this is really important, even if it's like how many orgs could possibly achieve so much of an ROI so quickly when all of this stuff is so new.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. It sort of goes, and it's a lot of the, again, I go back to that MIT study that I think is a little bit of a disservice in this area, if I'm being honest, because I agree with you. I'd be curious of the group's take, but I agree. I think that this is such an existential change. Like the cost of falling behind is so great. Like you just need to have an organized effort, even if you can't make the direct measurements you mentioned. But the reality is the data bears out this way for now. I think partly because maybe our leadership aren't being thoughtful enough about what this means to all of us, and maybe in some ways taking a much longer term view of it, right? So any other comments on this? We can go to the next poll. I know we're in our last 10 minutes. David, you're doing a better job of managing the chat than I am.
Yeah, I think we're good for the next poll.
Okay.
Hope to
top concerns when it comes to AI adoption. So just pick 3. That's how we did it in the survey. Pick 3 that you are your top concerns. I'm going to go ahead and fill this out myself.
Yeah, quality of insights, integration with existing systems, data security, accountability, upskilling a team. Yeah, we got some varied answers coming in so far. Brand standards, maintenance. It's I think it'd be hard to pick only 3 from this list.
They're all.
And we're not policing this. This is still the honor system, because but we do have one lead response right now, and again, data savvy crowd here, and this is mirroring what you found.
I mean, this is amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's almost identical, right? You get some bottles. I mean, it's literally eerily close, but yeah, I mean, I guess this makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I do think that my hot take on this real quick, and then David, I want to turn over to you and the group, is I do think the quality concern, it perplexes me a bit. It perplexes me a bit because I do fundamentally see opportunities to, at a minimum, maintain quality, especially in the enterprise. You've got proprietary data. You've got an engine of innovation and thinking that is above and beyond certainly smaller companies, right? We've all talked about that. So I kind of don't relate to the quality issue. I think if you're so someone help.
So, some of it too, I'm so curious how like this question, maybe more than most others, track over time, because also from so many folks I talk to right now, there's a lot of that trough of disillusionment. And it's because they've gotten some insights and they're hallucinations, or they can't get it to do what they want, or they're trying to go and integrate things with Excel and Google Sheets or an existing system of record they have, and they're not getting what they want. And they still need a lot of that manual work to go and get something that feels insightful. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's just like there's some of this effort because there's so much investment going into the data and analytics and insights fields. So now it's like, and look, like when it gives you the wrong answer, it's like touching a stove, right? Like you remember touching a hot stove way more than you remember cooking a pot of pasta 100 times and nothing goes wrong. Like you remember that smell of the burning spaghetti at the bottom of the pot. So anyway, like I think we're there too. And ideally, as like we learn how to mitigate this and even just rely more on our own data sources, RAG models, things like that, and prevent like erroneous data from creeping in. There are lots of ways to get around this.
Yeah, and the human in the loop is critical. I think I agree. You're right. The trending on this is going to be interesting. We do have 2 waves of this, and there'll be 2 more waves coming up in 2026. So it'll be really fascinating to see this. But I think you're making a good point. I do fundamentally see the human in the loop as being vital to quality. When you see a hallucination, okay, don't let programmatic content be your strategy, for example, right? I think that's risky. Any other thoughts from the group on this that you see in the chat, or anyone want to comment on this particular?
Yes. Yeah, sorry to jump in, but I'm with you 100%. I think this whole scaring data, getting hallucinations or wrong data is just as fallible as human error and typos on Excel or SQL data, or pulling the miscategorizing a feature and attribute in a product. I think it's really overstated. It's a scaremongering tactic. And I think as long as you institute policies for quality control and you have an experienced analyst or manager making sure that any possible technical hallucinations are, made aware as soon as possible and addressed, I think it's still a completely solvable problem. In the same way, I would train a new hire, an intern, a junior analyst to look out for those mistakes, because they will do that just as well as an AI would. So I think it's really overstated, and it's like scaremongering kind of.
Yeah, especially when I think about, this goes back to my comment earlier about the one-to-many controls we now will have available to us as marketers, right? Or even like CROs and salespeople, because yeah, I've seen much scarier things from a junior BDR trying to get a meeting than I have. Talk about hallucinations, right? So anyway, yeah.
And James, just because we're gonna have people drop at the end of the hour here, if you want to then just skip ahead now to see the results of this one, and then follow up and just share what's ahead for the research of this rollout.
Let's do it. So,
this research.
Yeah, so I don't know where you all would have landed on this question, right? Positive, neutral, negative, but through all the conversation, we do see generally very high levels of positive impact across the board. Slightly higher in growth stage. I do think it's fundamentally about growth stage companies tend to be resource constrained. They tend to have to move really, really quickly, and so I think they see AI at slightly higher levels, but generally there is robust positive impacts being observed, and not a lot of negative sentiment here. And we've had QA throughout this conversation, but I want to invite you all into a conversation that I'm going to have with David and Sangram Vajre at Go-to-Market Partners in October. We're going to actually have a fun session where we look ahead to what does the go-to-market team look like in 2028. We'll also be able to share some of the innovative technologies we see emerging in having that conversation. Sangam often researches that. I know, David, you have your own opinions, and we constantly diligence and watch the market in this area. So that'll be a fun session. Go get the research. Waves 3 and 4 are coming out. Waves 1 and 2 are available, right? All over Georgian.io, and we can send it out with a link as well as a follow-up, David, through your communication paths as well. Waves 3 and 4 are coming in Q1 and Q3 of 2026. So I hope that the third point of this is I hope that you all get involved. We're going to make it really easy for this community to participate in that research and even get to the point where we can do a more scaled cut of AI Marketers Guild community as part of it. We didn't quite get there this round. We tried to, but I think in wave 3 and 4, now that you're getting oriented to what we're doing and the partnership that we've got with you all, you'll participate. So, David, any closing thoughts there? And this was great.
No, this is great. I'll be excited to share all this with the community and also get us involved in these other waves. But yeah, I appreciate you spending time to share all this with us and just excited to work with you and the incredible partners and contributing to this and spreading the word and just learning from each other.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, I appreciate everyone joining today. Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. And look forward to just seeing you next week. We've got an amazing slate if you haven't seen the latest events and look forward to way more. So thanks again, James.
This has been great, James. Thank you for introducing us to your awesome work.
Yeah, very fun. We'll involve you all in the future. I look forward to it. Thanks so much.